All right, on today's episode of Python Papi, we're back inside our Tensorflow course, and we're still doing our human emotions detection module. Let's have a look at what we went over today. Now, I do have to give you guys an apology for the confusion. So, what was going on with the imports is totally my fault. First, before we get started, let me show you what's going on with that. So, I didn't need the Google collabs that I was trying to import. I just saw it on his screen. I looked forward and I saw it on his screen, and I figured I needed it too. So I tried to import them, and he didn't even tell us instruct us to import those. And the same thing with the argumentations here. He didn't instruct us to import them. I just saw it on his screen. I looked forward ahead in the course and saw that he had it imported, and I figured it was going to be something we needed for this upcoming section, but it's not. The only things we needed were the train, the TF TensorFlow train for the byte list, float list, the int 64 list, the features, the feature, and example. Now I still had an issue with those where I couldn't import them separately because they were both coming from the same exact import, but it was two different imports that he had on his screen. So I just combined them. I had to find the solution to it, and it had us combine everything into to bring it from one location, the TensorFlow.core.example.feature PB2. We're going to import the byte list, the float list, the N64 list, the features, and the feature. Now, I couldn't do the examples, but we can still access the example by using the tf.train example, so that wasn't an issue. So everything with the imports is squared away, and we were able to move forward, which we did this morning. So we did continue taking notes, and let's pick up where we left off. And the last thing we did was the tf.records, and from there we were going to start unbatching, and this is where we at today. So from here we'll go over and unbatch the data. This is how we will do this. First, we will unbatch our training data set, and then we will do the same for our validation data set. So you can see here we have our training data set equals training data set dot unbatch, and then we have our validation data set equals validation data set unbatch. Then we will go over back to the documentation recorded before creating the TF records. We need to put our data in the sediment format. More specifically, we need to create a proto files. And move down some proto files. And the way to do this is by making use of the TensorFlow example, and then create this TensorFlow example. We have these features which we need to combine to create this TensorFlow examples. Next, we will copy and paste the code we need directly from the TensorFlow documentation. Let me show you that. I'm not gonna do a whole bunch of reading, just show you what we did. So we basically copied the rough draft of the code that we need from the TensorFlow documentation, and we modified it to the way we needed it. Now this isn't the way it looked when we brought it over. It was just rough files. So we modified it to what we needed. There was a float list. We got rid of the float list because we're not paying attention to float list. We're just using the byte list and the int list. So the byte list is going to be what our image gets pegged to, and the int list is going to be what our label gets pegged to. And then from there, we created an example. Again, this is what we got exactly from the documentation. It came in a rough draft form, so it didn't look like this at all. We just had to modify it to our specifications. So you can see how example equals tf.train. Now remember, we had he had an import for train. He had an import for example, so he can use the example directly, but we couldn't actually find it. So I just still have to use the tf.train.example, which is no issue because it still has access to it. So we use it like this. But as you can notice, we still have features equal feature. We don't have to use the tf.train for the features or the byte list or the int list because we did import those. Let me show you again. So basically, what the imports gave us the freedom to do is we can use those terms freely without having to use tf.train in front of them. So you can see here we have the byte list, the float list, and the int64 list features and feature. So what that means is since it's imported, we can use these by themselves. We don't have to use tf.train byte list or tf.train float list. We can just use them separately, as I showed you. Only thing we couldn't get is we couldn't get the example over, so we have to use the tf.train example, which you can see here. See the tf.train example, but for the byte list, the N64 list, and the feature, we can use the standalones because we have them imported. So basically, that's everything we would know. We're still getting our code built and compiled. So you can see here we do have our defined method here of example, which is going to take as a parameters image and label, and then we have our example, and then it's going to return our example dot serialized to string method. And again, I know it doesn't mean anything to you right now because we did take a few days, so you're probably a little lost on what we were actually doing. But we're unbatching our data, and we're actually going to start compiling to make sure everything is still running smoothly. I did compile last night. I didn't compile new stuff. This is all new stuff from this morning, so I have to compile this tonight. But I can compile last night with the way that we had our data here with our imports, and everything worked fine. So our imports are working fine the way it is, and everything is still back on track. Like I said, I didn't need the Google Colab and I didn't need the implementations just yet. The Google Colab, I don't think we need at all. I think it's something he just had because he's using Google Colab as his editor. So yeah, that's that. And the implementations, I'm not sure when we're going to need it or if we are going to need it. He didn't mention it, but I saw it. So I'll just leave it there for now and just leave it commented out just in case we do need it in the future. But everything is back on track and we're moving forward full speed ahead. Like I said, everything ran fine last night with our imports with the old data, and we do have this new data here that I'm going to run tonight and make sure everything compiles fine. And we're going to just keep moving forward. And of course, I will keep you posted every step of the way. For now, it's the Python Papi. You guys stay Gucci.